In this video, we're going to learn a little bit about how to build a graphical user interface, or a GUI, in Java. Now, a GUI is what you're used to interact with the computer. Windows, scroll bars, buttons, checkboxes, places to type in code, and so on. We're going to be building windows from scratch in Java. We'll do this through a system of classes and objects from the Java Swing package. So let's get going. Now, GUIs are often operating system specific, meaning what happens in the computer to build Windows in a Microsoft system is different than in a Linux system or a Mac system or on your Android phone. But Java is supposed to be operating system independent. The same code that you write is supposed to be able to run on multiple platforms. So Java builds or supports several sets of tools for building GUIs that work across operating systems, so that you do something like say, hey, build a window, and a Mac knows how to turn it into a window for the Mac, and a Linux system knows how to turn it into a window for Linux. There are many packages that allow creating of different types of GUIs. We're going to concentrate in this course on the Java Swing classes. And the point of this video is to get you exposed to the basic terminology and do a real simple example together that's going to open up a window with a button on it. And then we will build on that over the next several videos. So here's the overview. There are three basic types of objects in Java Swing. There are components, there are containers, and there are layout managers, and these three work together. All of these are found in the package java.awt for abstract Windows tools, but some of the subclasses of these classes are found in the package javax.swing. So when you import classes in Eclipse, sometimes you'll be importing from Java AWT, sometimes from javax.swing. Now here is the documentation, or just the start of the documentation, if you try and read it from the official oracle.com website for the package java.awt. Now, I've only included the first couple of bullet points, and I put it in a small font. This is really hard to understand unless you already know what's happening. So we're going to try and learn by example, and after you've been through all of the videos for this lesson, you go back and look at docs.oracle.com, and some of the stuff might make sense then. So let's skip all of this fine print right now. We'll talk about components. A component is an abstract class. Remember from our last lesson, in lesson 5, an abstract class is something you won't actually create an object of. You're not ever going to say some object is a new component. You'll be creating objects of classes that extend component. So component is the parent, or the superclass, of many widgets. JButtons, JLabels, JLists, JText fields, JScroll bars, and so on. Notice the naming convention. They start with J for Java, and after that it's what that component actually looks like on a screen. Radio buttons and so on. Each of them correspond to some element on the GUI. So let's remember that. Components are the actual items that show up on the GUI. And a container contains a collection of components. Components get added to containers. So container is the parent or superclass of many widgets like a JFrame, a JPanel, a JDialog. Each of these can be thought of as a rectangular area that makes up a window or part of a window. So when we want to create a window, we're going to pop up a window that has whatever our application has. We're going to be creating what's called a frame window. So we're going to create a class that extends JFrame, which itself extends container. So we will work with JFrame or JPanel or JDialog. And then a layout manager is an interface. Remember what interfaces are? They're things that get implemented in a class to have certain methods with specific signatures that have to be included. So a layout manager manages the placement of components within a container. Remember, containers have many components in them, and each component has exactly one layout manager, ways to arrange those components on the container. So several existing classes implement layout manager. Flow layout, border layout, grid layout. There are a lot more. Those are the three that we will be using in our examples: a flow layout, a border layout, and a grid layout. The next 2 pages of this presentation will show you the code necessary to create and display a frame window. This is just a standard application window that you're used to seeing when you open applications like Chrome or Microsoft Word. We're going to do our work in 2 classes. One of them is our GUI class, and one of them is a class that has a main method in it. Let's first look at the GUI class. We're going to go through this code fairly quickly here. Make sure you also watch the practice video where we're going to build this code line by line so that you can follow along and do the same thing in Eclipse and have a copy of the code available to use as a sample when you're doing your programming assignments. So here I've got public class sample frame. That's the name of my class that is going to implement this window, this frame window. And it extends JFrame. JFrame is one of the container classes that is contained in javax.swing. I'm going to have one instance variable or state variable. I'm going to create a J button that I'm going to call panic button. Now, most of the work of creating a window in Java happens in the constructor for your GUI. You have to set up, this is what my window is going to do that is different than what the default for a JFrame is, and then JFrame takes care of all of the rest. So here's the things that I'm going to change. In this constructor, I happen to pass in a string variable for a title. I don't have to do that. I could have a constructor that had no parameters at all, but I'm going to say whoever calls me, creates a sample frame, is going to have to pass in a title. I'll call setTitle. That's one of the methods that's available in a JFrame, so I can just call this method without having to implement it. I inherit this method from my superclass, passing in my title. Now, I get in this frame a standard window that has, it has the title bar on the top and the little maximize and minimize buttons, and it has an area in the middle that I can put my stuff in. This area in the middle that I can put my stuff in is called the content pane. And there is a method called getContentPane. I'm going to create a container of my own that I'll give the name Content Pane to, which is the content pane of this window. And I'm going to say, hey, content pane of this window, set your layout manager to be a flow layout. More on that in coming lessons. Flow layout, border layout, grid layout. We'll do examples with all 3. I'm going to create my object called a panic button, which is a new J button. This one should be a capital B here, J capital B UTTON. I will fix that before I post it on the website for you. Then I will say, hey, content pane, add this new component, this panic button. Then I'm going to set the size of my window to 200 pixels by 100 pixels and make the window visible. That's what happens in the constructor. Now let's see what happens in my main method. Hardly anything at all. Let's say I've got a class called GUI driver and it has my normal public static void main in it. I'm going to create an object of type sample frame. This is the class that we looked at on the previous page. I create this object and I say sample frame is a new sample frame. Remember, the constructor called for a title. So I'm passing in a title. This is what will be displayed along the top of the window. And then I'm going to just do something that says set the default close operation to be dispose on close. When you close the window, you click the X button, then close this application. You don't have to do this, but it could mean that your programs keep running, wasting memory in the operating system even after you think you've closed the window. So just a habit to get into, setting a default close operation. What really does the work here is in the constructor. You create a new sample frame. Once it sets itself to visible, that window is up there, displayed on the screen, and the user can interact with it.